So this is the Dinosaur PC. I've been calling it that because, you know, it's old. It's got a 3rd gen i7 in it. And I've been just lying to myself saying that this is fine, this is okay, this is gonna work in 2025. No, it does not. It lacks surprisingly a lot of features that might make this PC, that makes it, well, just compatible for Windows 11 in general. I mean, I had to bypass a lot of settings to get Windows 11 on this. So, today we're going to be reusing this case for a budget build. And power supply and cooler. I think? Yeah, we can reuse the cooler. Parts. So immediately for our parts, you can see we're using a Pro Z790 from MSI, and immediately one would be to think, hey, isn't that a little not budget friendly? And to that I say yes. Well, until you hear why it's not budget friendly. Or no, why I picked this. You see, at Micro Center there's an open box section for motherboards, and this one in particular appeared to be $100 off. Open box. But when I bought it, got it home, it did not post. So unfortunately, I had to go back to Micro Center and get it replaced because it was still under warranty. Thanks to Micro Center, I was able to get a brand new Z790 motherboard. And luckily, this one's DDR4 and has PCIe 5.0, meaning we get some good features without having to break the bank on using DDR5. It's DDR4. Did I say DDR5 by accident? Whatever. It's not been tampered with because we got the seal here. We got everything underneath it. We got SATA connections. Heck, we even got Wi-Fi antennas, which is actually really nice. Usually I have to install my own Wi-Fi adapter. And our I/O shield isn't just metal. It's actually got its own cover. Well, at least, sadly, it's not integrated. I have a cough with me. What's this? Spare M.2 screws? MSI, you flatter us. More M.2 parts. I should just toss this back in. Quick start, and yeah, let's make sure this motherboard posts first. Well, as I'm sorting out my cough, let's disassemble the computer. First, let's get rid of all the... Let's unmount the cooler from the CPU because we're going to be reusing that. This is an old case, so our modern CPU might have an issue. But it shouldn't be an issue. Thermal paste is still, mostly wet, so we can probably reuse it. Usually you don't want to reuse thermal paste, but in this situation, this is so wet that I can just reuse it. The thing about Intel is that you have to get through a lot of screws to unmount their coolers, if you use an aftermarket one at least. And the thing about AMD is that you either use you have to either take out 4 screws or just 2 clips from 2 contact points. Not that hard. I guess they're equally tedious to take off when it comes to when using an air cooler. But AMD seems to be easier, especially if you use one of those old ass-long coolers that just clip side to side. unplug the 4-pin. Hopefully we don't have to mount any. We don't have to mount anything huge, and I just realized we don't have proper case mounting. Is this one of our... That was dangerous. It's a PCIe breakoff piece. Oh. Well, I don't think it belongs to this case, though. How'd that get here? This motherboard is uncomfortably flexible in some places. Then again, I am not organizing this stuff, so my fault. Let's remove all peripheral connections. God, that felt like that didn't want one off. We got stuff out. Come on. Come on. Slide. Slide off. Please. There we go. Your bog standard ATX motherboard. If I can fit in the camera. Now, oh, we don't have the mounting space. This might be a full-size ATX motherboard because we have nowhere to mount it. So, what do we do now? Well, what we can do is we can steal from a past build, which probably none of you have ever seen, because cough cough, people don't like to watch some of my old videos. Alright, let's just go to the part where I steal a motherboard from another PC. Well, turns out I did have a spare LGA 1700 motherboard lying around. Some of you might remember this from a few videos ago. I shouldn't have already sold this somewhere. Well, no, it turns out I kept it in the storage. But it's returned to us. Don't worry about budget. This is going to count. The price of when I got this brand new is going to count, or something similar or cheaper is going to count as this. Because most likely you're going to scrape the bottom of the barrel. Not too bottom. I hope you're not like going to AliExpress and buying the cheapest LGA 1700 socket out there. But we're getting close to the bottom of the barrel. So let's install this. Let's install this in. First, let's make sure it's all right, though. As you can see by our I/O shield, we lack a lot of things. But this is a cheap motherboard. What can you expect? Cheap motherboard. God bless the ATX standard and not the I/O shield. Whatever bastard decided to design an I/O shield with this amount of tolerance needs to be locked up and thanks to a certain brand, our screw holes line up perfectly. Can't say the same for lots of modern Dells though, or any OEM these days, because they're basically the same company now. There's no difference between HP and Dell, other manufacturers. They're just the same shop. One remotely close to being different is Lenovo laptops. I've got a better screwdriver for this. Whoopsies, I probably should have hooked up all the power connector before connecting all this. The sad part about this board is it's not even ITX. This is a weird, almost MATX board. Or pretending to be one. Like, what the hell is this, ASRock? You can't put this in an ITX board. It's small. It doesn't fully fit an MATX case. And in a full ATX case, it is just weird. Oh, there you are. Like, the connection positioning is weirder. Like, it's all cramped up in weird places. This is everything but your run-of-the-mill ATX motherboard. It's ATX, but how ATX? Like, there's nearly nothing normal about this motherboard. I'm struggling to just find stuff. I'm just gonna leave it. We're not even gonna do the front aisle headers yet. There's no 3.02 internal adapter, so whatever. And connect, and I don't have the drives with me. Well, this is as far as installation goes. I'm kidding. We got more screws to install. There we go. Tuck, tuck, and tuck. Well, we've lost over a bunch of... Stupid ass. Stuff falling around me all over. We've lost a bunch of PCIe slots compared to the old motherboard. We've essentially also leveled the amount of SATA ports here. But we've gained better RAM, although this is 2400 megahertz RAM DDR4. You can get better, but we're on a budget here. And what else would we lose? We lost pretty much nothing else because we were able to reuse the cooler because I hope some of you kept your mounting brackets or use a cooler, from Noctua to get yourselves a new bracket. If you did buy an unfortunate cooler that does not have any LGA 1700 support, just use the included stock cooler with the CPU. And finally, the piece that makes this build worth any money at all. The GTX 980. Am I milking this card? Yes, I am. Why am I milking this card? Because I'm too poor to buy anything else. We'll dump in a 3070 Ti. We'll dump in a 3070 and see what happens. But right now, we're going with the card you probably have with the old PC, and it's the 980. What was it saying? Oh, right. In Team Fortress 2, with 1080p, very high settings, we've got on average around 200 frames with our GTX 980, a 1% low, above 100, and a 0.1% low, about 92. Or 80, depending on how nitpicky you are, whatever. But anyways, one of the noticeable things about is that even repasting this card, 3 to 5 times, this card is still reaching 80 temps. From what? From what? Just being a blower style card on a flagship GPU back then? Okay, now actually that logic kind of makes sense if I'm being honest. It is a flagship card. Well, not in the flagship like the 980 Ti, but it's still a flagship on a blower style cooler, which is not usually the best combination. But at least at this level of usage, we're not drawing above 100 watts or anything. Same for the CPU, but then again, our little i3 is barely registering that anything is happening, so no need for any more power to be used than necessary. While this cough is killing me, nothing more to talk about. In World of Warships, our GTX 980 handles the same as before. Yada yada yada. You've probably seen me benchmark the GTX 980 so many times in World of Warships that it's probably getting stale. So this time, I might turn on FSR. But first, after I destroy my own brethren, the Skarnhorst, what's this? Another battleship? Florida? I really should have started talking about the actual games while benchmarking them. It's kind of fun, actually. But our 980 is doing well. 80 degrees Celsius. Not too bad. Not great. Although I recommend upgrading if you're already on the 980. If you're not in that financial decision to do so, I can also recommend that you try lossless scaling. CPU is pretty power efficient right now, but that's all because we're running on PCIe 3.0. Oh no, this is a slow GPU. So there's a lot of things to consider. Our averages are near 70, our 1% low is around 65, and our 0.1% low is 62. Not bad, not bad. Guys, let's go gambling. And we activate FSR 1.0. With some minor FSR, we get a around decent FPS boost, though I'm waiting for our 1% lows to update, as you cannot have a 101% low and a 98 average. Okay, that makes more sense. We have a 99 average, a 98 1% low, and a 1.1% low around 60 or 80, whatever. It's really bumping. It's really jumpy. I should really have a graph or something. And that could and the stutteriness could be due to the game, the internet, lots of things, but definitely not the 980 as the last test was working pretty fine. So I'm just gonna assume my router's busted. We're gonna start in ultra epic settings for Overwatch 2. FSR 1.0. That's not by my choice. Overwatch decides, have a little FSR. It's not like it's gonna smurder or anything. Although I don't know why they didn't update the settings to use FSR 2.0, even though that's kind of better. But complaining aside, let's get MSI Afterburner working and displaying its FPS counter. In Overwatch, our little GPU hits 100. On average, we're getting around a 72. Our 1% lows are at the same number, or probably still catching up. And I just almost died from a junkie. Well, let's get running. Temperature-wise, we're still blasting out 82 degrees Celsius, which is at least not 90, which is a lot to say. But CPU temps in this cramped case is pretty good. Not ideal, not for an i3, but not horrible for average daily use. So there's that. Average of 74, our 1% low was 150, but yada yada yada. And 0.1% low is also 50. And why can't people stand still for 1 second? And I haven't played this game for a minute. We're gonna lose. Well, the GTX 980 does well in Team Fortress 2. Everything does well in Team Fortress 2 nowadays. So let's torture it with something it technically supports. Technically. Not game ready anymore, but technically gonna work. We're gonna push this i3 and 980 to the limit. And in the end, if I'm feeling generous, if this works, I'm gonna drop a 3070 in here, or 3050, to see how that runs Cyberpunk. Na 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 na. In World of Warships, no FSR, 1080p settings, very high. We see that we've gone almost a double in FPS. Our 1% lows are 120. Our 0.1% is at the stable, fluctuating whatever 60. Let's say 60, and our averages are near 144. Of course, this GPU will drink a whole 200 whopping watts for power, but that's what you get when you get a 70 class GPU. But for the same amount of wattage as the 980, if I remember correctly, we get almost double the performance and probably smoother frame times if I had the graph up. Our main limitation is our slow RAM and our CPU. But since this is all theoretical, and what I mean theoretical is that you didn't buy a new CPU and you just instead bought a new GPU, then this will be okay-ish. I mean, not every part of your PC has to be a perfect not bottleneck system. I mean, you're allowed to run PCIe 3.0 on a PCIe 4.0 card. Of course, you won't get every single bit of performance out of it, but sure as heck better than nothing. God. I'm being connected. Target. Oh, never mind. Brake, turn, and I'm on fire. In Cyberpunk, 1080p high settings, I don't know if the FSR is on or not. It's the high setting preset. But anyways, we see a 1% low of 60, excuse me, 0.1% low of 42, 80, let's just say 60. 1% low near 90, and an average of 134. So our 3070 is doing pretty decently in Cyberpunk, high settings. But if you look at the VRAM usage, you'll see that's where the good stuff ends. As if we crank the settings ever the slightest higher than high, we'll most likely use more than 8, maybe 10. And that's where the cards like the GTX 1080 Ti and RTX 3060 12GB will shine. As they have more VRAM, but obviously they won't be as fast in just raw core performance as the 3070. So I would recommend either the 9070 or the 9060 XT 16GB. Reason why I'm not recommending the 5060 is, who the hell will recommend the 5060? Alright, let's see what happens when we enable ray tracing. We have just enabled path tracing on this poor bastard. And we see our 1% lows have dipped to 26.1% lows, a solid 4, and our average is a 2076. It seems to be our VRAM is a limitation, even though if I know my binary megabytes, that is 7.3 gigabytes or something like yada yada. I'm too lazy to guess. We've hit our VRAM limitation and our car is drawing its max TDP. Assuming that our power supply does not combust.
This is a playable experience. And our 1% lows just raised to 30. But that's after getting out of the crowd. So I don't know how the rest of the gameplay will be. And our average seems to be almost lying, as our FPS counter says 37. So take that 114 with a grain of salt. In this scenario, just don't enable path tracing. Muda.
Due to some minor things happening in a certain micro center and finding some money in my pocket, I have come back to alleviate our i3's pain and suffering by being paired with the 3070. This is a 14th gen i5 14600K, and we're going to be putting it into this poor motherboard, assuming if its VRMs don't combust. So just in case, I've decided to swap out the small cooler with a larger Thermalright 120 instead of using the 920 Thermalright cooler. Don't get me wrong, I like using the 920, but this is a more bigger TDP CPU. We definitely don't want to take our chances in an overheating CPU, especially in a low ventilation case with one fan. I could get more 92mm fans, but I'm too cheap. Just be bigger. Just be better to let the massive cooler of the 3070 work and the massive cooler, well, soon to be massive cooler of the CPU cooler to work. Please don't bend, please don't bend, please. Ooh, I gotta inspect that to see if there's any bent pins. I'll zoom in the camera for you, though. Oh, thank God. Well, let's free our little CPU from its prison. Oh, my favorite part, the Intel Core sticker. We'll apply it on the front of the PC later. How do you get this out? Yeah. Yeah. Screw it. It's cardboard. Clamshell, clamshell. Out with the old, in with the new. First, let's figure out how this gets in, though. Oh. God, that felt wrong. CPU officially in, and did that not feel comfortable in any way, shape, or form at all? Okay, let's cut the part where I screw on the cooler, because I don't think people want to see any more montages. Oh, wait, I forgot. I almost forgot the best part. The part that makes everyone unhappy. There. If you don't like that, cry.
Has someone already... Anyways, in World of Warships, we see that our little 3070 is doing pretty well, and our CPU is doing not too bad. Although,
we are only drawing 65 watts as we have dumped this in a B610M motherboard. And we could go into Intel tuning system and completely adjust the wattage limit on this B610 motherboard, but this is a B610 motherboard. So why did I press Z? I mean, why did I press T? And so that means that if we crank up the voltage, our VRMs might combust. And this is like a 10 core CPU, maybe 16. I haven't really checked. I'm just gonna edit in a the graph of how many cores this thing has. But anyways, CPU performance is better. Our GPU is no longer being bottlenecked by the CPU. Everything's good. And I forgot I'm not using my usual ship. This is Colorado. Good old Colorado. Made to fit the Suez Canal and not much else. Suez. Sneaking away, Dunker. No torpedoes, Dunker. Our 1% lows are at 170. Our 0.1% lows is near that same amount. Let's say 112. Our averages are 200-ish, 210. Seems like we got a pretty decent FPS going on in World of Warships. Although I could not say the same for the sound. Originally with the i3, it was a little more quieter, and it's getting a little louder. Not cause the CPU is suddenly larger. As you can see, our temps are at a stable 65. It's more our GPU now has to work more, and now that beefy cooler is working harder. Because if I put my ear right next to the case, it comes from more down below towards the GPU, more rather than the CPU. It's cooler itself. Now let's do some ray tracing. In Cyberpunk 2077, 1080p ultra settings with ray tracing enabled at ultra.
I'm sending the coordinates of a vehicle that went dark near to where you are now.
Thanks, I'll try to find it and reset.
Thanks, Delamain. I'll go approach it. But anyways, with ultra ray tracing enabled, we see that we have a pretty decent average around 80, although I would call that more of a 78 if I'm being honest, and 1% low around 60, and a 0.1% low about 49. Temperature wise in this dinosaur case, we're seeing our GPU around 74 degrees, our CPU at 68. Usually I don't talk about temperature, but since this is a old hardware in an old case, it's something worth mentioning, as most of our exhaust is being sucked in by the PCU, and that can lead to some questionable reliability issues. And what I mean by that is the PSU might the PSU might get hotter than normal, as usually modern power supplies expect to draw fresh air from the bottom of the case, where they have their own place to draw in air. Meanwhile, in an old case like this, it's either power supplies used to draw from the back of the case or inside the case. And that wasn't really an issue, because hardware used to be, used to dissipate less heat. But nowadays, since we're dissipating large amounts of heat in a constant stream, as our modern computer cases tend to have very high airflow. So I wouldn't recommend dumping in this kind of mid-range build into an old case like this, but you can do it. I just don't know why you would.
Final thoughts. Well, as I'm recording these final thoughts,
the unexpected things have happened, like me suddenly getting an i5 14th gen, and the sudden appearance of my PC flipping project. I'm gonna release probably next week or someday later. Whatever. Well, we pretty much skewed away from what I originally said in the original start of this video, which I have no idea what I was filming in the beginning. It was originally meant to be i3, cheap build, budget system, and it quickly turned into a sleeper. Of course, a sleeper with piss poor RAM, but that can be explored in a different video. Right now, my final thoughts is, yes, you can make a sleeper out of your old PC, and also, yes, you can make a decent entry-level build with your old PC if it's ATX. Although, I would recommend you try and aim for DDR5. Not right now, but if prices do get better, I would recommend DDR5, as DDR4 is, well, pretty much DDR3 at this point. And I would recommend something AM5 or LGA 1700 socket, because AM4, if I'm being really, really honest, AM4 is like really, really dead. I mean, again, I'd recommend it. I won't stop you from getting it, because AM4 is still pretty. AM4 5000 series is still pretty good, especially for budget builds. That'll last, I don't know, five years without upgrading. 3 to 5 at best. I wouldn't expect the best experience with AM4 in 2025, soon to be 2026. If you liked the video, leave a like. If you have an opinion, leave a comment. If you liked me, then subscribe. If you didn't like me at all, then leave a dislike. And see ya.